Welcome to Boomer Travel Patrol. I'm your host, Lisa Kaslyn, and welcome to our show. For folks that haven't heard, gotten the memo, etc., this year is the 100th anniversary of our National Park Service. It was founded way back in August of 1916 under the Woodrow Wilson administration to protect and preserve the beauty of our country. And today we have about 410 areas covering over 84 million acres in every state, District of Columbia, American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Incredible. Today we've got Ford Cochran, who's the Director of Programming for National Geographic Expeditions, and he is going to talk about the parks and also the relationship between National Geographic as a founding patron many years ago and some of the exciting things that Nat Geo is doing this year. Welcome, Ford.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I'm delighted to be here.
So talk about the history a little bit, how National Geographic sort of came together and really helped push through the national park system.
Sure. Well, National Geographic's been enthused about the national park idea since before we even had a United States National Park Service, really since the very early days of our organization. Gilbert Grosvenor is a fellow who stewarded National Geographic for more than half a century. He was for many years the editor-in-chief of National Geographic magazine and really the individual who defined what we as an organization would be about. He was also for many of those years the president of the society. So there was another patron of the Park Service, Stephen Mather. He would become the first director of the National Park Service. Wow. But before there was a Park Service, he was a wealthy businessman. He was a great marketer. He'd come up with the slogan, 20 Mule Team Borax, for the borax that his company mined in Death Valley, the company that he was working for. And made a fortune out there, mining, extracting resources from the land. But he also developed a real love of these extraordinary wild natural landscapes, and he wanted to see them protected. So he was telling anyone he could find, we needed a park service. And he decided one great way to make advocates was to bring people out into nature and let them see what was there. So he hosted what was called the Mather Mountain Party. He brought a number of folks he thought could be really influential in helping to get the job done out into the Sierra Nevada, into the groves of big trees in what is now the Sequoia National Park, elsewhere in California. And they camped out. They were out in the outdoors. They talked about what this meant. They talked about the legacy they could create if they ensured that the parks were protected right, not piecemeal, as they had been before. And one of the people he invited was Gil Grosvenor. Grosvenor basically drank the Kool-Aid while he was out there. He came back fired up to dedicate this organization to doing whatever it could to help to create the Park Service, to build the case, a public appreciation and also a legislative appreciation. That's what it would take. So he devoted the April 1916 issue of National Geographic magazine to what he called the Land of the Best, a celebration of all these wonders in our national parks. Got it distributed to everyone on Capitol Hill, every influencer, every decision maker he could find, and of course, all the members of National Geographic. And later that year, the Organic Act was drafted and passed by Congress and signed by President Wilson, and we got a Park Service. He also devoted not just coverage, but cash. What the organization had, he put at the disposal of finding and preserving really important land. So he actually purchased a grove of big trees to be added to Sequoia National Park to ensure that those would be protected. And that's something that we've done several times since over the years. We were instrumental in the establishment of Redwoods National Park, which along with a bunch of California state park holdings protects groves of the tallest trees in the world. Sequoia has the largest trees on Earth. Redwoods National Park has the tallest trees on Earth. And that was in the 60s that got done. But we've been doing that work ever since, covering important landscapes, helping to build the case for protecting them so that we could leave a legacy for our children.
Beautiful.
Today we're doing that work outside the U.S. as well as inside it. We've covered many of the places that are now World Heritage Sites and international national parks in other countries. One of the notable examples is a hike that a fellow named Mike Fay took with a photographer and a film crew across the interior of the Congo Basin in Gabon. As a result of that, the president of Gabon was moved to set aside a whole bunch of land, more than 10% of his country, as new national parks. And since then, we've helped to ensure that those parks are protected or funded so that the job can get done. They'll be here for their children to explore and the rest of us to explore for generations to come.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so National Geographic is kicking off this year-long plus initiative, Power of the Parks, Exploring the Parks for the 100th anniversary. So talk about that campaign and some of the things you hope to achieve through that.
You bet. Well, so this is, we're 128 years old this year, National Geographic, but this is the largest editorial campaign we've ever undertaken. More coverage, more people, more time spent in the parks. We have had photographers out for years in a number of national parks, particularly the world's first national park, which is Yellowstone, where a team of photographers spent a year and more apiece living in the park, living with the people who know the park best, getting to know its landscapes, getting to know its wildlife, and documenting them. And so in every issue of National Geographic magazine this year, there are stories about the parks. In our travel magazine, National Geographic Traveler, and our kids magazine, National Geographic Kids, stories about the parks. We've updated a number of our popular guidebooks to the parks, including a favorite of mine, if I may, the Guide to the National Parks. This is a wonderful, wonderful volume. There's a brand new edition, lots of new photos, entirely new text, all sorts of insights on how to experience the parks and enjoy them best. We also have new books and new editions of guidebooks for kids, so that families and kids can enjoy the parks. In National Geographic Expeditions, which is where I work now at the Society, we have launched new trips to explore national parks in the United States and Canada, including a so-called Ultimate National Parks trip that'll get to Glacier,
Oh, wow.
Yellowstone, Grand Teton, Olympic National Park in Washington, and the Grand Canyon. I'll be joining a departure of that in September. And then on the Nat Geo channel and Nat Geo Wild, we have new TV specials, new TV series, all sorts of new coverage of the parks.
Love it, love it. Okay, so we're talking to boomers. We're talking to youthful boomers who want, fun, excitement, adventure. Are there, whether it be, Nat Geo's expeditions or just in general, your picks, which parks do you think are the best? Let's say for somebody who hasn't explored the park yet and is in this sort of demographic, what do you suggest?
Yeah, well, I would say this is a great year to discover or rediscover the parks. If there are parks you've been meaning to get to but haven't gotten to, you should go. And I've grown up when I was young. I had, of course, being a younger person, I'd only had a chance to visit a few of the parks. These were places that I dreamed about. And as I've been able to go back, visit these parks, often bring people to explore the parks, take my family out to explore the parks and gotten to know them. They all over deliver. It's hard to decide which is my favorite because I think all of them are so rewarding in so many ways. Certainly, if you haven't seen the huge and famous national parks, the Grand Canyon and Yellowstone and Yosemite, they call them, though Grand Canyon starts with a G, inside the Park Service, they refer to them as the big Y parks. The Y parks, Yellowstone and Yosemite, of course, those first parks come to mind. Those parks are justly famous. Photographs, we're a place, National Geographic prides itself on visual communication, on fantastic photography and filmmaking.
Yeah.
And as magnificent as some of the photos that our photographers have taken to the parks are, there's nothing that substitutes for actually being there. So just standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon. I know the first time my wife came, she wasn't so sure she'd be excited about it. She thought it'll be hot, it'll be dry. I've seen photos, I'm just not sure. I'm excited, but not that excited. She walked out of our hotel room. We'd gotten in late, checked in late at night, walked to the rim of the canyon and just broke down and started to cry.
Wow.
It's just overwhelmed with the beauty and the wonder of it, the splendor. But even the parks that, some of the East Coast parks, the landscapes are a little more tame. Shenandoah is really close to Washington, D.C., so it's an easy trip, a day trip or a weekend trip for me and my family. But there's incredible beauty, the small details, the life in the forest. Plus, you can actually get a hike that rivals any out west. You can hike thousands of vertical feet up to get to the top of Old Rag. It's a really rugged workout. And when you're up there, the view is breathtaking. Yeah. So, we may associate that just with the big, Western parks, but there are incredible vistas here in the East too, in places like Acadia and in Shenandoah and Great Smoky Mountains. I'm going on and on because I love the park so much, but I'd say just get out and see a park you've been wanting to see your whole life. This is a great place. Knock one off your list.
Good, good, good. All right. So aside from picking up your wonderful guidebook, do you have any maybe secret tips that you employ when you plan a trip to the parks?
Yeah. Well, it's Part of it's planning ahead, and then part of it's spontaneity. I have planned trips to the parks more than a year in advance.
Hmm.
When I knew full well I wanted to go, I wanted to get all the rooms at all the great lodges that you can stay in the parks. Many of them book up really early, so
Hmm.
it helps to plan ahead. But I've also planned late. I mean, just yesterday I was planning a trip. I found out I've been invited. My family's been invited to participate in an event in Banff, which is in the Canadian Rockies. We're
Oh,
surrounded by
yes.
national parks. It's beautiful. So I'm bringing the family out to Glacier National Park, and we're going up to Banff, and we'll see Lake Louise and Moraine Lake and the Canadian Rockies. It'll be wonderful. Well, there are fantastic lodges in Glacier. This is going to be the week of 4th of July. So
Oh,
here it is. It's, I'm recording this now. It's not that far away.
no.
But fortunately, I checked over a few days. There were cancellations. I've been able to book rooms at almost all the lodges in Glacier National Park and up in the Canadian Rockies that we want to stay in. So there are cancellations all the time.
Hmm.
I've also dropped everything and gone and visited a national park at the last minute when I had a business trip or another trip that got me close. I thought, I want to see that place. I'll take a day and go and see it. You can have a wonderful time. I guess if I had to share one secret, it's look
Yeah.
to the rangers. Get to a visitor center. Yes, grab our book if you can get a copy of our book. I keep it with me. But also get to the visitor center because the rangers know those parks well. And whether you just have a few hours or a whole week to spend in a national park, they'll have great ideas about what you can do and suited to whatever level of fitness and rigor you want in the experience that you're going to have.
Good advice. Good advice. Okay, before we let you go, are there any cool, interesting expeditions coming up, either in the parks or not in the parks that maybe our folks would like to hear about?
Well, sure. I hope, if you're thinking of booking a planned trip to the parks, you'll consider National Geographic Expeditions. We love the parks, and we've been going for years. I actually traveled a lot. I've been with the Geographic for almost 25 years. I've only worked full-time in our travel group for
Mhm.
the last 5, but for 20 of those years, this is my anniversary, I've traveled on our trips, many of them to the national parks. The very first trip I went on 20 years ago was a Pacific Northwest Canadian Rockies trip that
Mhm.
actually got to Glacier National Park and to Mount Rainier and to the Canadian Rockies National Parks in Canada. And so we're offering trips to the Canadian Rockies, again, on the Rocky Mountaineer, a train, if you want to take that, a fantastic experience, sort of a once-in-a-lifetime
Uh-huh.
experience. The Ultimate National Parks trip I mentioned gets to a number of the national parks. And then we have great classic trips to Yellowstone and nearby Grand Teton National Park. They're neighbors. The two parks are such wonderful contrasts,
Mhm.
absolutely breathtaking. The canyons of the Southwest Grand Canyon, Bryce, and Zion National Parks,
Mhm.
3 tremendous canyon parks, but so completely different. I mean, the Colorado Plateau, that whole elevated region, the staircase stratigraphy, they call it layer cake
Mhm.
stratigraphy, one
Mhm.
layer above the other, eroded into all these incredible, incredible landscapes.
Mhm.
They're all those parks are different, and they have such character and such flavor. That's one that I love. So come with us if you like, and we'll bring experts out to
Love it.
help to really bring the park to life. If not, take a look at our itineraries, see where we go. Those are trips you can do on your own, too, in many cases, and you can map your itinerary around some of the places we go to get our ideas. The last thing I'll mention is one other place that everyone should see in Alaska is Glacier Bay. This
Mhm.
is a place John Muir, the great naturalist who really helped to build the case for many of the national parks to get them established. He went up there. He had spent his life in Yosemite, which is a landscape that had been shaped by glaciers. He understood that before most people believed it because the glaciers are practically gone in
Mm.
Yosemite.
Oh,
But
wow.
glaciers are what shaped that incredible landscape. When
Mhm.
he went to Alaska, he saw the processes that he thought had been taking place. It really bore out the story that he'd been telling. And he was so thrilled by that. So he fell in love with the place. Huge glaciers covered the entire bay when it was first discovered several centuries ago. But since they've melted back 60
Mhm.
miles and more, and you have glaciers calving into the sea, and into the bay, you have incredible marine life, you have
Yeah.
bears on land, and
Mm.
then you have these spectacular glaciers, thinning and
Extraordinary.
retreating fairly fast. So it's a landscape that's changing quickly. I'd
Mhm.
urge everyone to do it. We do that by ship, and that's really the best way, small ship, the best way to go and see them.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Ford, for joining us. We hope to have you back again.
Thank you so very much. It's my pleasure anytime.
Have a great day.
You too.